Hello guys, my name is Gavin, and today I'll be showing you how to do an interesting tutorial. This will be how to load information that when the user types in a file name, it's going to load up a certain thing. So if you notice in the top left corner of my game view, it's going to say text file name and text points. And if you look over to the left hand side of your screen, you'll see a folder that says 1, 2, and 3. If I type out 1 and hit enter, you'll see it loads 43. If I type out 2 and hit enter, you'll see it loads 332. And if I type out 3 and hit enter, you'll see it hits 453. Those are the numbers that I have inside of those three files. But if I type a file that doesn't exist, like 4, it's going to put file does not exist. And now this is probably going to be a longer tutorial than usual, but I will show you. So we're going to have each of these files is going to have a number, like this. And we're going to use these as we type out information and retrieve the information from the file. Alright, let's get started. So start off on your desktop, let's hit right click and hit new, and let's do folder like this. I'm going to rename this folder as Infinite Files or something like that. Infinite Files. I'm going to open up a Blender project and do File and then Save to that Infinite Files. So Infinite Files like this, and I'll name this as Game Project. Okay. Now that we have this, what we're going to do is hit save, and let's go and let's actually double click the A button until everything is selected and hit X and delete. Hit 7 to go in the top view and do spacebar and then add a text object. Hit Shift and D to copy this text object. Right click on the bottom text object, and I'll rename this to main text and then file text. So the main text is what we're going to be writing our script for, and then we're going to have this file text up here display a message. Let's then go from defaults to game logic and go from Blender render to Blender game. And with our main text object selected, what we're going to do is add a couple of game properties. This will be an integer, and I'll call this points. And I'll change this to a string, and I'll call this file name. Sorry to turn on the light really quick. Alright, for the string we'll leave it as 0 or nothing for now, and this points we'll just have it set to 0. Hit these eyes right here and do game and then show debug properties, and hit P, and you'll see in the top left corner it'll show those two icons under the debug properties line. Okay, now that we have this, what we're going to do is add an always sensor. Click those first three dots and add a keyboard sensor. And this keyboard sensor will be called enter key. I'm going to put tap, and for the key let's put enter, so whenever we hit the enter button it's going to read the file and load the information from the file that we want. Let's add a Python controller like this and connect these like this. Okay, now that we got this, what we're going to do is do text and create a text block. And at the top of our text block we're going to import the BGE, and then from the BGE import logic and events. We're then going to have path is going to equal logic.expand path. Expands path like this. And I'm actually going to rename this as scripts.py really quick. Add this right here. Minimize that. And underneath here, let's define our main function. And let's run our main function. Alright. Above our main function, let's define the controller and the owner. So let's have const is going to equal bg.logic.get current controller. Let's have own is going to equal controller.owner. And let's define the scene now is going to be equal to bg.logic.get current scene, like this. And okay, now that we have this, what we're going to do is get this file text object, or the object that doesn't have all our logic stuff on it. We're going to have file text. Yeah, file text. File text is going to equal scene.objects file text. Okay. Now that we have this on our main text, we want to actually display on our main text what's our file name and then, the information after that. So let's have own.text is going to equal file name and then plus own file name. So essentially what this is saying is that it's going to equal the word file name, and then we're going to add this game property onto the end of it. So if we hit play, it's going to say that. Alright, now that we know that works, what we're now going to do is open up that folder we saved our Blender project in, so the infinite files or whatever you called it, and we're going to create 3 text objects. New text document, and make sure these names are capitalized. 1, then we're going to have new text objects 2, new text documents, and 3. And the reason why we want these capitalized is that by default, whenever you type something in, the key is capitalized, and I don't really want to go through the process of lowercasing it. In our 1 tab, let's define just any random number, like 12,342. File and save. In our second one, let's just define another number again, 1233, I believe. Okay. And in this one, let's do 899. Okay. And as you can see, if we double click on them, those numbers are still there. Alright, now that we have this, what we are now going to do is actually have it so that we can actually get information from whatever we type out. So let's have key events is going to equal bg.keyboard.events. Events, like this. Alright. And what we're now going to do is, because if you remember all those keys are numbers, we're going to have hit key, or the key that we are currently hitting, is going to be equal to K for K and key events. Put a slash like this, hit the tab key a few times, and then if key events K is double equal to bg.logic.kx underscore inputs underscore just underscore activated. Okay, so now that we have this, what we're going to do is have it so that if we press if the hit key is equal to something, so if the list of hit keys is not 0, so if hit key is not equal to this, what we're going to do is print hit key. Alright, now that we have this, let's do window and then toggle system console. Hit the play button. There is an error, line 14. Keyboard. Oh. Logic.keyboard events, my bad. And we can see every time we hit the key, or whenever we tap on the keyboard, it's going to print out the integer form of our key right here. Let's then have character value. A variable called character value is going to be equal to bg.events to character. I'm going to put hit key and then 0 to indicate the first item within our list. And let's put true. And I'll actually scroll out so you guys can see. So like that. And we're then going to print the character value to the console to make sure this works. Character value. And if I hit P in this little sliver, you can see every time I click a button, 97A, 115S, etc., etc. Now, one thing I want to show you right here is, let's say that we just press the enter key. So let's say I hit P and hit the enter key a couple of times. You'll see that this is 13 and it puts a space in between this. What this is actually doing is having it so that it's going to go on to the next line whenever we hit the enter key, because it's equal to, well, enter is essentially equal to this, like this. Essentially, it's equal to the new line thing. And since we don't actually want it to go to a new line, because that'll mess up what's going to happen when we type it, let's have it so that, I'll hit this tab key once. Let's have it so if the hit key thing is not 0, and if hit key 0 is not equal to 13. So essentially saying, if we type anything on this keyboard except for enter, it's going to work. So if I hit the enter button, it's not going to do anything, but if I hit everything else, it is. That's what we want, and that's what we're going to use. Okay, what we are now going to do is have it so that we are going to add the character value to our string. So let's do own file name is going to plus equal character value, like this. So we should see if I hit play, it's going to just essentially add to that file name string at the top of the screen, and you can see it's going to print after the word file name. That's what we want. Okay. Now that we have that, what we're going to do is write our load function, because we want to actually have it so that when we hit the enter button, it's going to load the game. So above our main function, let's define load, and let's put file name right here. Okay. Once inside this, what we're going to do is do file is going to equal open path plus file name, and we just want to be able to read it, so let's put the R like this. We'll have line is going to be equal to line is going to be equal to file.readLine, so essentially we're going to read the information from the file. And below this, what we're going to do is have the variable number is going to be equal to an integer of line. Since everything inside of our Notepad documents is technically a string right now, then what we're going to do is have it so that our own points is going to be equal to number. So essentially it's going to load the number from the file, and it's going to set the game property number equal to that. Okay. Hit control and scroll out. Now that we got this, what we're going to do is we actually haven't defined enter yet. So if you remember, we have our enter key as our sensor right here. So underneath, let's say file text right here, let's get enter key. Enter key is going to be equal to controller.sensors enter key, like this. Okay. Now that we have this, what we're going to do is have if, let's just say, if enter key.positive, what we're going to do is call the load function, and we're also going to, in a sense, we need to have a massive file, or we need to load, when we call the load function, we're going to need a parameter file name. So what I'm going to do is make an something called user input is going to be equal to own file name plus the .txt extension. Then we're going to put user. Then we're going to call that with user input in here. So user input is going to be equal to whatever the character type or whatever the player types in with the .txt extension. But you'll notice that if we hit play and I type out random gibberish and hit enter, there's going to be an error, and it's going to be no such file and directory. This is what we need to do. We need to have it so that all this stuff right here is surrounded by a try catch. So hit the tab key in front of all these lines, and up here we're going to put try. Then below this we're going to put except, and we're going to print this file does not exist. So essentially what's going to happen is that if there is no such file in existence, it's just going to print to the console this file does not exist. So if I hit play, type out random gibberish, and hit enter, instead of doing the error like above, it's going to put this file does not exist. And actually what I'm also going to do is print the file name to the console, print file name. So if I do it again, hit enter, you see right here it's going to do as all this stuff .txt. So it is looking for that file in memory, but it can't find it. I'm actually just going to save this really quick. Okay. Now that we have this, what we are going to do is have it, so we know that inside of our folder, our infinite files folder, we have 1, 2, and 3. So if I hit the play button and type 1 and hit enter, you're going to see the points variable under debug properties is set to 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. But as you can see, the file name still says 1, so anything we do after isn't going to do anything. It's just going to set that there. So what we're going to do is have this. It's going to, once it calls this load function, we want to have it so that it's going to set our own file name back to just the original thing. So own file name is going to equal nothing after it calls this function. Actually, we can actually do this outside of it. So own file name is going to equal nothing. Okay. So what should happen is if I hit play, type out all this junk, hit enter, it's going to go back to 0 for the file name. If I type out 1 and hit enter, it'll load 1. If I type out 2, it'll load 2. And if I type out 3, it'll load 3. If I type out junk again, it won't do anything. And the last thing we're going to do, just because, well, actually we have one more thing to do after this, but if we can't find the file in memory, what we're just going to do is have own points is going to equal 0. So if we load something that's non-existent, we're just going to set the points back to 0. So junk 0, 1, all that number, and then we typed out an imaginary file name, couldn't find it, it's going to set that points back to 0. Okay, the last thing we want to do is have another game property, and this will be a string. This string will be called file text, because remember, file text is at objects on top of our main text right here. And what we're going to do is have it so at the bottom of our script, we're going to have file text dot text is going to be equal to our own file text. So this object on top is going to have the words displayed on it that are equal to this game property. So what we're going to do is have, if we were able to find the file in memory, we're going to have own file text is going to be equal to file found colon like this. Then we're going to put comma and then own points, or a string version of own points. So plus str own points. Alright, so we should see that if I hit P and type out 1, actually it looks like there's an error really quick. Let me check. Oh no, there's not. So hit play and type out 1 and hit enter. You see it says file found, and then all that stuff. We'll type out 2, file found this, 3, but if we type out junk, it's still going to display that. So what we need to do to change this is have it so that if we don't load a correct file, we'll put own file text is going to equal file not found. So if we load something, it can't find it, it's just going to change the text to file not found. So if I hit play, type out junk, file not found, 1, file found, what's out of it? 3, file found, 2, file found, junk, file not found, junk, file not found, 1, file found. Okay guys, that is how you can use user inputs to load files, so user keyboard inputs to load files. This is a much longer tutorial than usual, and I understand that. So I will be going over this script. So, at the top, we did all the normal stuff we normally do for loading. We imported logic, and we also did the events for the keyboard stuff. Define the controller owner. Controller and owner, like this. Then underneath this, we define the current scene. Define the current scene like this. Defines the file text object, like this. We censor enter key. That was also defined. Then what we did is define the load function. Defines load function. Then underneath that, we use try and catch, or try and find file name. Try and find file name. And then we used except if the file could not be found. If file could not be found, like this. And then at the very end of it, we would reset the file name string variable back to 0 whenever it called it. So back to nothing. And this back to nothing enabled it so that we could get ready to type out some more code or more information. Then we define the main function. Defines main function. And then underneath it, we had it so that if we hit a key, and the list of keys that we hit, so if list of keys was contains something. So if we actually hit a key and it was inside the list, and if we didn't press the enter key, because that would mess up our stuff if every time we hit the enter key, it would add a new line to our actual file name. Then what would happen is if we press the enter key down here, if we pressed enter key, it was just going to call the load function, So called load function. Then at the very bottom, we displayed messages on text object, like this. So that's a very long tutorial, very long script, and probably one of the more complex scripts I've done in the tutorial. But I really feel like this is one that's important if you can get the grasp of it. Okay, guys, well, that's all I have for now, so I hope you have a good day. 1, 2, junk, etc. Alright, guys, have a good one.